I'm Brian Peltonen, founder of Parcosm.ai. For the better part of the past 2 decades, I have either built or overseen the development of data science projects and AI solutions for large companies and the government. Most of that time I've spent on the financial sector. So I have seen projects fail over the years for lots of different reasons, but a lot of them keep coming up. There can be a real temptation for data scientists to try to amass a large amount of data, think about how they want to process things, think about the algorithms that they want to use, insights that they want to gain, work on this in a silo, and then present it to subject matter experts or decision makers, and hoping for this idea to be embraced, only to find out that the experts aren't all that interested with what they've produced. And so the reason, and sometimes this approach works, but the reasons why it fails again and again are for a couple of core issues. One is buy-in from decision makers. They just don't have the trust. Second, it's not solving an actual need that someone has. Third, it doesn't account for some kind of exogenous factor that someone in the industry knows, but that outside of it, it's not known. The data may not represent the actual world. This comes up a lot. And lastly, it can be a solution that just can't be implemented. So with the first one of these, buy-in from decision makers, this is something where if you start with a subject matter expert or decision maker early on and talk to them about the project, get the ideas going, build trust, developing this together, you have much greater chance of the project actually being implemented. And part of that is, along the way, sharing when the results aren't going as you thought that they might. There can be a real disconnect between what a subject matter expert thinks AI or data science might be able to do for them, or you might tell them what it can and cannot do. They may not be aware of what data sets can help in their decision making. But on the other side, if you're an AI practitioner, you may not know what the actual issues are of the people who will be using the solution you're trying to implement. But I just have to stress, candid feedback along this process is essential. Another issue that kills a lot of projects is not solving an actual need. So oftentimes something that happens, somebody puts all this work in, they develop a project, they bring it to someone, and the response is, that's kind of cool, but I don't think I'll use it, but maybe you should talk to blank. If you talk to somebody early on and you build that trust, you can find out what are the things that would actually help them in their role? What would help them in the organization? And this is a great way to find where the most impactful opportunities are for projects. Not accounting for exogenous factors, this is something that can really delay projects. That there's a lot of unknown unknowns in the world. I think in finance, an example is slippage. That's the difference between a listed price of a security and the realized price. When novices come in and they see historical data sets, they assume that, or oftentimes it's assumed that they can get securities at those prices. Seasoned quantitative analysts know that there can be a gap between what was posted and what kind of securities you can get at scale. They have ways to account for that. But it's something that, unless you've been in the industry or are familiar with it, might be surprising. So this is something that can be a huge time saver, talking to the experts early on to understand, are there things I should know that I don't know about this? We all know that data sets don't necessarily represent the real world. When you come across a new data set, usually they're presented as this is perfect, it's scrubbed, it's clean, there are no issues. And the more you learn about the data set, the more you learn just how different it is. And as you understand where those biases are, you also learn that they can frequently change over time. One somewhat famous example in finance, there was a consumer transaction data set that showed massive growth in a restaurant chain. What had really happened was the panel shifted towards the region of the country where that chain had a lot of operations. Now, these are the kinds of things that good data science techniques can't find and should be utilized. But working with a subject matter expert, it's helpful to be pointed in the territories where these issues may occur. And when you find that discrepancy where the data actually does represent the world, but it's different from the subject matter expert, that's where the biggest opportunities often are, but they require extra work and a lot of scrutiny because it's very hard to convince someone that this is correct, but it does have the biggest potential for disruption. Coming up with a solution that can actually be implemented, this is something that can kill lots of projects. There's so many ways that something couldn't be developed. It could be regulatory, legal. It could be something that doesn't fall within the mandate of the group that you're working with, or it could be impractical for other reasons. Many years ago, former colleagues of mine developed an optimization system for postal carriers. They found ways to make the routes more efficient, give time back to the mail carriers who were delivering mail on foot. But when it came time to implement the system, the mail carriers didn't want to adopt it because they liked their old routes. They had friends along the route. It was familiar to them. So they effectively voted it down. These are the kinds of things you want to know early on before you invest the human and other capital into a project. As we shift into a world where more and more solutions involve generative AI, this becomes much more important. It's relatively easy to get a large language model to produce some kind of result. It's much harder to find out, is that result accurate? Certainly finding out if it's accurate at scale, but it's even harder to find out, does this represent the view of experts? Compounding this problem, humans we're not all that reliable ourselves. If you give people relatively simple tasks like saying, are these short posts positive, neutral, or negative? We're correlated about 80% of the time. That drops if we're given a more complex task. So working with these subject matter experts and key decision makers to develop a gauntlet of tests to make sure you can rely upon these results is essential. So in short, working with subject matter experts, you save time, it improves accuracy, it increases the impact of a project, and you have a much higher likelihood of the solutions you build actually being implemented. Thank you.